Little late to the party, but hey, better late than never. Let's see if they get it right this time around. Birds of Prey, or the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Or is it Harley Quinn Birds of Prey? Or just Harley Quinn? I don't know, whatever they're calling this fucking movie now. Birds of Prey is kind of a sequel to 2016's Suicide Squad. However, this time we are mainly following Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn, who has recently broken up with the Joker. Now, once everybody figures this out, apparently there's a whole bunch of people that want her ass dead. Mostly because of all the fucked up shit she's done to people over the years, and no one would touch her because she had immunity because they were all scared of the Joker. But he ain't here anymore, so now it's open season on Harley Quinn's ass. Oh yeah, and the movie also shows how the all-female crime-fighting team, the Birds of Prey, came together. Which makes sense because, you know, the movie's called Birds of Prey. But make no mistake, this movie is mostly about Harley Quinn. And that was probably a good idea because the other characters in the Birds of Prey aren't nearly as interesting as Quinn. Huntress, she's pretty cool, but the other two are, they're okay. I think one of the first problems this movie ran into is its name, calling itself Birds of Prey. Because that's just not what it is. This is the Harley Quinn movie. And from the get-go, that's just what the fuck they should have called it, was Harley Quinn. The fact that it shows how the Birds of Prey come together is fine, but that is nowhere near the focus point of the movie. And that right there, focus point, that's one of the movie's problems. It really doesn't have a tremendous amount of focus. Much like its main character, Harley Quinn, it's just kind of all over the place. However, I will say that it's not nearly as bad as a lot of people were saying it is. The movie, for the most part, is actually kind of a good time. For the majority of its runtime, I was on board. I was having a good time with it. I mean, it wasn't the greatest movie ever, and I wasn't just like totally pumped throughout the whole thing, but I was enjoying myself. I was having a pretty good time, and I was more or less engaged in what was going on screen for the majority of the movie. Although, the movie does really drop off, or it did for me, right there at the end. It's actually when the Birds of Prey come together. Shortly after that, there's some action scenes that take place, and the movie just kind of goes vanilla. Not to mention that the resolution between Harley Quinn and the big bad guy, Black Mask, in the movie is probably one of the most anticlimactic endings to a comic book movie that I've ever seen. I was on board up until this last part, but then it was like the movie just lost all of its sense of fun and went straight to Dullsville. It is just the last few minutes of this final confrontation when this happens, but it was very noticeable that just like all the fun just suddenly went away. It's almost like somebody else was making the movie, and I don't know what it was specifically about it, but it was just very anticlimactic, not fun, and kind of boring. However, that last 5 to maybe 10 minutes of the movie doesn't ruin everything that came before it. And as a whole, I enjoyed myself with this movie. The story is more or less forgettable. There's not really a lot going on here. There's some crap about a diamond that a lot of people in the criminal underworld wants because somehow it has some codes like within it that lead to even more money. And that's one of the things that our main bad, Ewan McGregor's Black Mask, and a whole bunch of other people in Gotham are after, so that they can all be, I guess, richer than they clearly already are. And through a course of events, Harley ends up with this diamond, and then they want it from her, and there's some other stuff that comes up from her past, and a few other side things mixed in, but really none of it holds any weight whatsoever. So suffice to say, unlike many movies, the story's not really what carries this movie forward. That would go to the characters, mainly Harley Quinn herself. And not just the characters, but the way the movie's made and shot. That helped out a lot too. The vast majority of this movie is shot with a vigor and veracity that goes 100 miles a minute and doesn't really let up until that very end scene. If nothing else, you don't really have time to think about how light the story is because so much shit is going on screen and it's just all kind of out there and crazy. The movie bombards the screen with things at any given time, and at some points it's a bit overwhelming, but I kind of feel like that's Harley Quinn's life. That's kind of what's going on in her head at any given time. So it was probably a conscious decision to do this, to put us, the viewers, in the mindset of Harley Quinn. Just crazy shit popping off at all times. And I'll say that it more or less worked, until that last few minutes. Overall though, the movie is fun. There's not a ton of substance here, but it is a good time. It's fun, it's erratic, it's kind of crazy and out there, and just fun to watch. The performances as a whole are pretty much what you expect here. I was a bit disappointed with the other Birds of Prey, not necessarily their performances, but just their characters, and they were all just kind of dull and didn't have a lot to do until the very end of the movie. I mean, they're given things to do throughout the movie, but it all just seems like background noise until they're brought to the forefront in the end of the movie. Though I think a lot of that goes back to the title of this movie being Birds of Prey. I mean, when you go see a movie called Birds of Prey, you kind of expect those birds of prey to have more to do in the movie. If it was just called Harley Quinn, I probably wouldn't have been expecting these characters to be doing much more than they're doing here in this movie. Like I said though, the performances as a whole are what you expect. Margot Robbie, of course, is great as Harley Quinn. Much like with 2016 Suicide Squad, she is the best part of this movie. The wild, erratic craziness of her character is just really fun to watch at any given time. And she plays it with a childish glee from beginning to end. Ewan McGregor's villain character Black Mask is okay. I've heard a lot of people give the character shit for just a horde of different reasons. Me, myself, I didn't find him terrible. I didn't find him great. And the whole Black Mask thing, I really don't fully know why he calls himself that. I mean, I know in the end of the movie he wears a black mask, and I guess I know where that comes from, but it really doesn't play into the movie much. And there's not really much of a reason for him to wear this mask besides the fact that he just wants to look cool, I guess. Which, how cool he looks is, you know, kind of debatable. And the character himself is kind of a generic bad guy. I mean, he was fine. He didn't really take anything away from the movie, but he also didn't really add anything to it either. McGregor's good as usual, but he just doesn't really have much to work with here. Like I said, it's kind of a vanilla character. He's bad just because he's bad. He's not really ever given more than that to go with, and while he's not the greatest villain in comic book history, he's also not the worst. The special effects in the movie are all good, however, they're all kind of heightened and surreal. I think a lot of that has to do with the vast majority of this movie takes place from the perspective of Harley Quinn, and this is just how she sees the world. There's shit popping up on screen throughout the whole movie that I think only she sees. And even the explosions and all the natural effects that are going on in the movie are very heightened and sparkly and shiny. There's lots of stuff popping out in color, and like I said earlier, just constantly stuff bombarding the screen. It works and adds to the frantic ADHD nature of this movie. And while yeah, it is all fluff, it is fluff that's entertaining and keeps you engaged while the weaker story wouldn't. So if it wasn't for that, the movie probably would have suffered. As a whole though, the effects all look really good and fit within the world that they're in. The movie's also got an R rating, which I think is a first for the DCEU. I mean, it's not the first DC movie to be rated R, but I think it is the first one within this DCEU they've got going on. And really, I don't think that R rating added much to the movie. Yeah, there's some violence and foul language and all that good stuff, but I don't really feel like this movie was changed in any substantial way by having an R rating. Really, I wouldn't be surprised if the movie was shot as PG-13, and then they went in and added a bunch of ADR language and digital blood and guts to make it rated R. I'm not saying that that's what happened, I'm saying that if that did happen, I would not be surprised in the slightest. And while I have no problem with the movie being rated R whatsoever, I don't really think that R rating helped this movie at all. It really seemed more like a publicity thing than anything else. So that they could say, hey, look at our comic book movie, it's rated R, it's got bad language and violence in it. But it really just doesn't add anything. At the end of the day, Harley Quinn, Birds of Prey, Emancipations, whatever the fuck we're calling this movie, was okay. It's not great, but it's nowhere near as bad as I had heard leading up to seeing this movie. The vast majority of the movie is a fun time to watch with some entertaining performances. And while you shouldn't run out and buy this thing, or even rent it, it's absolutely worth checking out on Netflix. The movie's just kind of middle of the road. It's not great, it's not awful, but it is entertaining enough to watch for the night. So there it is, guys, my review of Birds of Prey. I'm not saying the rest of that shit again. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a thumbs up. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Gotham City. In the lead up to this movie, they kind of made this big deal about Harley Quinn having her hyena in the movie. And everybody was like, fuck yeah, Harley Quinn finally gets her hyena. But I hate to break it to you, if you haven't seen this movie, yes, the hyena shows up, but it's only in the movie for like a few minutes, and then this thing happens and it's gone. I mean, what the fuck? How do you fuck that up? You had a fucking hyena in your movie that could have made it that much cooler. But they said, no, fuck that. Why would we make this movie cooler by having this badass hyena in it? You wanna know how to fix the end of the movie I was talking about? Put the fucking hyena in it. I mean, they could have made this hyena like the dogs in John Wick 3, and that probably would have fixed the whole entire ending problems right there. Whose idea was it to take the fucking hyena out? I mean, really? You had a fucking hyena. That word hyena is starting to lose its meaning to me.